Well, dear listener, we continue giving you summaries, opinions concerning the budget that has been presented by Minister of Finance, Mr. Gudo Gondwe, today. With me right here is the British High Commissioner to Malawi, Mr. Michael Nevin. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine. How do you summarize this speech?
Obviously, we have to look at the detail. There were lots of annexes to look into. But I think the Minister got the emphases right. Clearly, there's a maize situation, which the government needs to respond to with donor assistance. So the emphasis had to be on that. But also, this maize situation is caused by climate and weather erratic patterns now, and climate change is with us. We do have to adapt. So he is quite right to emphasize that. But it's not all about the weather. It's not all about climate change. It's also about the failures in the agriculture sector. So there was some emphasis on agricultural reform, the emphasis on, again, further reforms to FISP. It's good to see more private sector in there. Let's see how that's going to work. An emphasis on irrigation, as he said before, I think. Look, I was here myself 15 years ago, and everyone was talking about irrigation. And here we are 15 years later, and we're still talking about irrigation. So as the Minister said, we really have to do it. And I think he outlined some steps there. I would hope it would go beyond irrigation. The Control of Goods Act, I think, needs to be revised. Farmers need to have an incentive to grow and then export. I think there need to be, get the markets working properly. I think they are still distorted. So yes, the emphasis was right. I think he's also quite right to respond to the short term, but keep in mind the medium term. So the national ID card, for example, is one example of trying to think ahead. So how can we have efficiencies in the longer term? And that was the ID card.
Well, you also talked about the fact that this budget will continue to be heavily dependent on domestic revenue because probably most of Malawi's partners are no longer supporting the government in direct budget support. But he was hopeful that maybe along the way, those governments or institutions that stopped to support the budget directly will come on board. Do you really agree with the measures that they put in place? Maybe are they going to convince those donors and government partners to come back and start supporting the country as far as the budget is concerned?
I think there's two aspects to that. One is domestic revenue mobilization, and he is quite right to talk about broadening the tax base, the tax review. I think his target for the MRA is challenging. I think his growth target is challenging as well, but he did lay down that challenge. On the other side of it is the public financial management. Now, it's taken quite a long time, but I think the public financial management reforms are starting to show some fruit. They need to go further. They need to be sustained. But he's right. Look, we've all heard figures of 30, 40% of the money which is lost from government coffers, which could have gone elsewhere, from fraud, from theft, from corruption. I think there's more to be done on waste. I think there's a lot of money spent here which doesn't need to be spent on things. But he's right that in terms of the public financial management, it is getting better. As for budget support, this country gets $1 billion in support from donors. That is highly, highly significant. Not all of it, in fact, most of it isn't in the form of budget support. It never was. And again, he was right to say it was never 40% of the budget. But whilst for the UK we don't do budget support, that is a global policy, not just for Malawi. We work very much with government, and we're providing 80 billion kwacha just from the UK alone in grants, not loans, not like some others. And we are, working not just bilaterally with that 80 billion, but we're also contributing through the World Bank, through the African Development Bank. That's also UK money as well. So there is support coming in, but his emphasis, and indeed the President's emphasis, is right on self-reliance.
Well, looking at the total speech from beginning up to end, is there anything that maybe when you were coming to Parliament, you expected the minister to say, and he didn't say it, and then you are probably shocked that it wasn't said?
I don't know, I'm shocked. I was surprised he didn't mention the Iron Sheets project, the Malata subsidy. So again, that's one of the things we'd have to check whether it's in there. I would hope that if that subsidy and that program is continuing, that it could be targeted on those, for example, who are trying to recover from floods. So in that way, you're targeting it to support the recovery effort. He wasn't very clear. He said it's in the annexes what the different VAT measures are and the tax measures are. So we'll have to see, because that is crucial, because he, as I said, he has set quite a challenging target for MRA. Maybe some of the detail is in the annexes about how they're going to go there. But ultimately, I think also there needs to be a real emphasis on getting inflation down. It's still too high.
Well, lastly, if you're given the task of maybe just for one day being an economic advisor to the president of this country, and in extension to the finance minister, how would you advise them as far as the implementation of this particular budget is concerned?
I would advise that they don't employ me, because it's such a difficult... I mean, let's face it, it is a very, very difficult job. And I wouldn't want that job. But I think it's all about the macroeconomic, and it's about breaking the cycle of Malawi's dependency, particularly on insecurity. So how can you create the fundamentals where inflation is coming down, and therefore interest rates will come down, and therefore the private sector is given a chance? I think also that the minister said something which probably most people missed near the end, and I believe that fundamentally is really part of the answer. And he said something about the functions of government. I think the public sector reform program needs to really tackle that. What is it the government's for? What is it that it should do? What is it that it shouldn't do? And how best should it do it? Should it do it, or should other people do it? Should there be more of the private sector involvement in actually delivering rather than government delivering?
The minister said Malawi is in a financial crisis. Do you agree?
I think it's in a difficult place. We've seen some good movement recently. As I said before, I think it took too long to get to this place. But we're seeing some good movement. The trick is, can it sustain it? Can it get that balance right between the short term and the medium term? But as I said, there's $1 billion coming in from donors. So there is support there.
Well, thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, that was the British High Commissioner to Malawi, Mr. Michael Nevin. Thanks so much there. Well, dear listener, I think we have to end it there. In summary, the Minister of Finance has just presented the 2016-2017 national budget. It is pegged at 1.2 trillion kwacha. This is a jump from 917 billion kwacha 2015-2016 national budget.